Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Kathryn.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to Mission Imperfect. Today we are talking about failure, why we dislike it so much and perhaps why we shouldn't. But failure, it's an uncomfortable word, isn't it, Kathryn?
It is. And yet it is one that I have started to find I like talking about it. And I'm trying to help people feel a lot less uncomfortable about it. And I think it's one of those things, we hear it and we sort of do a bit of an inner clench, don't we? No one likes this idea of failing, do we? Because I think we have this light in which we see failure. It's sort of like, you win or you lose. And if you lose, what are you? A loser? No one wants to be a loser, do they? And it's this idea of, it's this idea of failing, or failure means, not good enough, messing up, getting it wrong. And we then in turn skip to making that mean something bad about ourselves. It reflects badly on us, who we are and what we're capable of. And yet we didn't have these thoughts right at the start. These are things that we've sort of grown accustomed to thinking, when we go through school and we have tests and all these sorts of things. But we're not meant to get everything perfect. You and I both feel very strongly about the word perfect, don't we? Hence why we've called our podcast Mission Imperfect, because otherwise wouldn't we have been born as, fully functioning robots with nothing to learn? Imagine if everything you did, you nailed it every time. Like, I'm going to try this, done it. I'm going to do that, done it. It'd be a very odd life experience. And yet, despite all of that, we still don't like failure.
I'm just trying to imagine that. I've met a handful of people in my time who seem to have that mastered, and nobody really likes them, do they? No.
They don't do it all the time. They don't. They just don't let on. It's that black and white perspective, isn't it?
It is. And what you say, that babies when they're first starting to learn to crawl, to walk, and presumably what's going through their heads is not, "Oh, I'm not going to try in case I fall over again. I don't want to fail." It's through the failure that they're learning to do it better, isn't it? And yet, as the older we get, the more we think of things exactly as you say, in that binary way. It's an either or. You are succeeding or you are failing.
Yeah,
and maybe you're just doing.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Going back to what you're just saying about babies, that's such a good, because they watch. If you look at them, they spend a huge amount of time watching other people. They learn by watching what you do. Like, so when you're walking and eating and all those things, and what goes, I think, through their minds is, well, you can do it, so therefore I can do it. I just haven't, and theirs is like, well, I've just got to work out how to do it, and that's as far as the processing goes. So yes, they will try. They fall on their bums and then they get back up again, carry on. But we seem very reluctant to do the falling bit on our bums, don't we, when we're old? So, you don't want to spend your life crashed down on your ass, do you? But it's like we forget this acceptance of learning how to do something. And with that binary thinking of right or wrong, success or failure, there's the whole heap of stuff that belongs in the middle, which is the learning, becoming accomplished in something, and that it isn't sort of, you either suck at this or you're great at this.
No, you start as a beginner, you become a little more proficient, you can become accomplished. I like the word accomplished. I've been reading some Jane Austen recently, and accomplished comes up quite a lot. It's an interesting word, but that's not the word we're discussing today. It's failure. But I think with failure, it's that, and going back to the babies and everything and the learning, failure is really just experimentation, isn't it? It's the result of experimenting, and the point of experimenting is that it takes a lot of wrong results or results you maybe weren't expecting in order to find your way to the right outcome, to make the great discoveries. So a failed experiment is, well, it's not a failure. It's an experiment that has taught you something. You've learned something about what works and what doesn't work, and how to move forward, most importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love you found a brilliant quote from this, didn't you, from Thomas Edison?
Mm. Yeah, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And that's,
Isn't it good for people who do persevere?
Eliminating them, yeah, until you find the right one. Yeah.
Imagine if you think, oh, the first time I will try and invent, the light bulb, and it doesn't work. You think, oh, well, that's it. We'll just live in the darkness forevermore.
Yeah. Well, the Wright brothers, I know that one didn't fly. Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a nice try. We failed. End of. Yeah. Where would we be?
Exactly. So I think I've got a few, I guess, key points I just wanted to talk about when it comes to failure.
Yeah.
This is why it's one of my favorite topics, because I think accepting that it is inevitable is so important. And it's not in a sort of keel over and die kind of thing. Like, I think, oh no, that's, I failed, disaster, end of the world. It's okay. What have I learned? What can I take forward to the next time? And it's the response bit that's so important. And the fact is, we are very imperfectly human, as we've spoken about before, and we have judgment and perception and subjectivity that come into play. So there's just a huge amount of grey rather than black or white. Even if we try to be objective, we can struggle with that one, especially when it comes to ourselves. And just because we've experienced failure, it doesn't mean that success will elude us. In fact, I think you almost have to have the failing en route to success, unless you're extremely lucky and you nail something the first time, which is great, but that's just not going to happen all the time, is it?
As Thomas Edison well knew.
Yeah, exactly. And then the final really key thing is that I suppose I actually talk about failing as the verb rather than failure, because I think that makes it sound like a defining feature of perhaps who you are, like I said at the start, being a loser, or, you are a failure. I think that's an awful phrase that should never be used as a description of someone. Just because you've experienced failing doesn't make the person a failure. It's not a defining feature of them and who they are.
No, that idea of a person as a failure, that had me sort of sucking the air through my teeth in the sort of the, oh, no, that's ouchy. I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants that.
Exactly. And yet it can be a message that people say to themselves, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a future episode when we're talking about the ways in which we talk to ourselves. Because if messages that we reinforce, like, oh, I'm not very good at this, it won't work, we almost start telling ourselves outcomes about failing before they've even happened, which is such a shame, because that means we're put off from trying, aren't we?
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, how we frame it to ourselves. It's so often, I'm a failure, as opposed to that didn't work. That activity failed. That thing I tried to do was a failure. It's, I have failed. I am a failure. And it becomes a generic identity, I guess, doesn't it? Not just a description of a particular moment in time.
Yeah, exactly. And let's be really honest here. Let's talk about some past failures, because we will all have them in our life experiences today. It's nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to hide. So we thought, let's just talk really openly and honestly about some of those today. And I'm sure our listeners can probably think of a few themselves. And the point is, some of them that, yes, it might have meant your life went on a different path, but who's to say that that was necessarily a wrong one? And we'll come back to that in a moment. But so, for example, things like a job interview that perhaps you really wanted to get, didn't work out, a university offer, an exam, a driving test. I know we love to talk about driving, don't we, Kirsty? So we're gonna share ours, and I have to. This is the for me. This might come as a bit of a surprise. I actually did pass my driving test the first time. I was a terrified learner driver, so I refused to take my test for a very long time. As it was, I used to be driving around on my lessons, and my instructor would say, "Are you going to take your test soon?" I'm like, "Nope."
No,
just keep turning up for lessons.
Familiar, yeah,
yeah, and even the test day itself, that's probably one of the most nervous experiences I've ever had. I was probably a sort of knuckles turning white on the steering wheel. And I felt my examiner, he was a little bit mean. He tried to make me go down a one way, so take the next, take the next left, take the second right. And it was a one-way street, and one was a factory entrance. I thought, oh, he's trying to trip me up, the meanie. So emergency stop. He got a proper emergency stop. I'll tell you that much. And anyway, that aside, I have experienced
whiplash from it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, have that.
No, I don't.
But I have experienced all of the other three. I did not. There was a job interview I didn't get that I wanted. I didn't actually get into my first choice of university, and I failed one of my exams when I was studying for my HR qualification, and I was gutted. It was the learning and development module. I was devastated. It was one of the modules that I was most keen on, and thought I was an area that I really enjoyed and should have done well at. So those were all real blows, but they haven't defined everything for me in my life and my future. But tell us about yours, Kirsty.
Oh, where to start? It was picking picking the particular ones to talk about was the problem, not identifying them. I did fail my driving test first time, even though I waited a very long time to take it. But I was actually pleasantly surprised because I think I failed it barely, which was a really pleasant surprise to me. It was kind of positive failure, which made me feel better about going in the second time when I did pass. But my university offer, I actually missed the grades that I'd been told I needed by one grade. And I can remember on that morning when you get your results, and my parents were together, so I'd phone my dad and tell him that. And the first thing people were saying was, "What does that mean about your uni offer?" Because I missed it. I mean, as it turned out, they took me anyway. But it was that sense of having slipped a grade, but one that it's another exam one. I mean, I've gone for job interviews. I haven't got quite a lot of them really. But yeah, none of them. That's an interesting point actually around failure in a job interview, because I think very often the job interviews I went for was because I was looking to get out of where I was rather than because I wanted to be in that job. And I wonder how sometimes we actually set ourselves up for failure in some ways when we are subconsciously unsure. But that's another matter entirely. But the big one that sticks and still irks me a little is, and this is going back a long way. I mean, we're going back to the days of O levels, which some people may not remember. And I was always predicted an A for my English O level, English language O level, always. And I got a B. And I discovered within minutes of leaving the exam room that I had missed a question. You come out and people are talking about the questions. I had missed a question that was worth a chunk of marks.
Oh, no.
We had these tiny old-fashioned little wooden desks that were on with an A4, water A4 paper, an A4 sort of trifold exam sheet, and all this stuff. And just in shuffling stuff around my desk and being a bit distracted by stuff that'd been going on with my parents' stuff, I just didn't spot this quite chunky question at the bottom of one of the pages. And yeah, I mean, the sense of failure, I mean, I got a B. Most people wouldn't call that a failure. But my English teacher actually stopped me in the street to go, "What the hell happened?"
Yikes.
So talk about making you feel like a failure. I mean, I get it was meant as a compliment, I guess, that I was considered able, but it didn't feel like it.
No, and that's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, to be honest, how would you even be supposed to answer that? Because presumably at the time you didn't know you'd missed a question. So it wasn't like you'd messed up. I don't even know how you would answer a question like that. Even when the intention is perhaps well meant, that's quite what it was bound to invoke a feeling of I've messed up, isn't it, in the person you asked that question to?
Yeah. I mean, that came out after the results, right? And I said, I because people talked about the questions and how they answered them when we came out of the exam, I realized quite quickly what happened, that I had missed one. So again, I was, a bit like getting into my first choice university, even with a lower grade, there was that element that, I did it. Thank heaven for that. That feels quite good. And with this, it was, I missed something that was worth, it was a double figures percentage of the mark.
Wow.
Missed.
So you must have,
there's a part of me going, oh, I'm so glad I got a B.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it sounds like therefore you must have done really well on everything else to have still come out with that mark. So that's another way of looking at it, actually, isn't it? That despite a very human error, because we are human, we do make mistakes, you still did really well on all of the stuff that you did answer. And luckily it didn't impede your progress thereafter. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's how we recall our experiences of things going wrong that's actually quite important, I think. And we can have, I call it the boom reaction and the rational response when it comes to things going wrong. Because I think, and again, I'm sort of laughing because I think we've all been there. It's very, very human. In the moment, it's like disaster, end of the world, it's just like Armageddon. And we can feel really bad about stuff, and we think it means a huge amount. And then I think the rational response is what comes, hopefully it does come a little bit later, when we're able to sort of respond that little bit more calmly and rationally. The world didn't actually end. We might have noticed that there wasn't actually Armageddon. And we get that perspective of, okay, can I try again? Do I want to try again? What might be my next course of action, rather than this has just determined my fate forevermore kind of thing, into, well, actually, what can I do next? So instead of focusing on all the disaster stuff taken away from me, it's like, what can I do about it? And we don't always see that so much straight away, and understandably so.
No, I mean, I love that description of the boom reaction. Yeah, that's the boom, the world has just exploded and ended. And it can be very hard to see around that. And I guess the kind of external reaction to that can play a part in it as well. We see it all the time in the media, well-known people fuck up in some way, and that's it. They're just being slated and everybody's talking about it and there's no respite from it. And that must be so very hard to rationalize. But it's, I don't know, even now, nearly 40 years on from that O-level failure, in inverted commas. I'm trying to sound the inverted commas there as I say it.
Yes.
I still feel the echoes of that boom reaction, that there's still that, it always my head that starts off with, if only you'd looked, why didn't you look at the paper properly? Why didn't you go back there? Why didn't you? And it still goes on. But as we just talked it through, obviously, I have rationalized it quite a lot, but it took time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It can do sometimes, can't it? Because we think we have an idea of how things are going to pan out. We do love to try and predict the future. That's another downside of human nature. We like to think we know how things are going to go, and it doesn't always do that. And I think the thing about failure being things not going according to plan, a couple of things I wanted to mention about that. And I think sometimes it's about maybe adding the word yet, like it hasn't yet gone according to plan. So do we perhaps get another chance? Sometimes, an exam, we get a chance to resit, or, a driving test, use that as a good example. Yeah. Do we get another chance? It doesn't have to be a sort of A or B type outcome, hopefully. But there's also what if it's actually part of someone else's plan rather than our own? And I think you might quite like that one, Kirsty, because is that some kind of failure too, that we're doing? It's almost like not someone else's bidding, but do you know what I mean? Is that, are we actually following path that we really want? It's interesting to think. Yeah. And then finally, I'd just say failure and failing, they're not permanent states, just as success isn't either. If you think about in the past, brands that have been phenomenally successful, they don't always get to stay there. And ones that have perhaps been deemed something of a failure, they can turn things around. So it's not like this sort of, like we were talking about the black and white thinking, the state is also not black and white as well. And your example was a really good way of demonstrating that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it can be easy to assume that once you've achieved success, you are successful, you are a success. And yet, the mass media loves to show us the pictures of and tell us the stories of those former celebrities and superstars that have fallen on hard times.
Yes.
It is transient. It is part of the journey. It's not the destination.
Yeah. So I think what you said before about it being experience, I like that. I think you see a lot of quotes saying it's not failure, it's learning. And yes, I absolutely get the sentiment of that. But sometimes it is hard. And, sometimes the learning is quite brutal, actually. But it is experience. And the thing is, if we don't try, we don't get to experience that success either. And surely that's worse. I think personally, this is a mantra I'm going to have to live by now, Kirsty, because I'm saying it out loud. But if we don't try at all, surely that is worse, because then what are we denying a possibility of? And I think failing along the way is a chance to see what can evolve, what can change. Do I actually still really want this? Is my heart still in this? At least you're going to know. Whereas if you stay back here, never trying, I think that's that kind of limbo. And when people say they don't want to have regrets, I think that's where regret stems from ultimately, isn't it? Perhaps the not trying, the not being willing to see if you might fall down as you go, but you might still get there.
Yeah, that whole I wish I had tried and known for sure one way or the other, rather than always wondering. Maybe it's like the old saying, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I don't know, there's that sense of, at least if you've tried and you've landed on your ass, now that's what happens when you tried it. And maybe you pick yourself up and you go again.
Yeah.
And like I said, what if it's somebody else's plan? What if it's not actually what you want, is what you think you should be doing? What, the direction you feel you should be going in, the things you should want. And again, if you try, you're probably more likely to understand that better. It's more likely to become clearer to you. Now, if you don't want to get up again when you land on your ass, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's not what you want.
Yeah, I think so. So let's share, as we like to do, some quotes. And there were many on this subject. I think that's also a good sign. And from some brilliant, famous voices. So I particularly like this one, which is a Churchill one. Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Which I love that. That one really does remind me of like the toddler getting back up all the time. They fall over. There's no loss of enthusiasm. It's just we go again. But the fact that success consists of the failure, I really like that it's not just you try and you succeed straight away necessarily. There is the failing on the way, but without loss of enthusiasm. Love that bit.
Yes, it puts a very different sort of emotion onto it, doesn't it? And it's, I think something that's coming up for me as we're talking is, we keep tending to see success and failure as opposites, when actually they're just integral parts of moving forward.
Yes.
But from another politician, let's keep the political theme going, JFK, those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly. And okay, miserably, it doesn't really tie in with the whole enthusiasm thing, but you get what he's saying, right? He's
But yeah, I like that honesty. The fact that it might be miserable at times, and it's interesting that from the political point of view, because we've just had an election, haven't we? And we've seen how fortunes can change. So yeah, I think that's a really important message as well, that it isn't always going to be easy and you don't always bounce straight back up and so on, but it still can lead to great things, sometimes unexpectedly. Fortunes do shift.
And it all ties in with things that we've talked about before around the whole self-belief and resilience thing. It's when you fail and you learn that you can come out the other side and you can get back up, you can go again. That does more for your self-belief and resilience, I think, than success can ever do. In a weird way.
That's a brilliant point. I like this one, Michael Jordan. I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying. So just linking back to what we were saying, if you don't try, you don't get to experience the success. But not even that, you just don't. It keeps you in a state of just not doing, doesn't it? And that's just not progress at all. I love how you said that the progress is all of it together, not these polar opposites of success and failure. It's just all experience.
Yeah, they're both parts of it, aren't they? Yeah, and I mean, if you're not trying because you don't actually want it, then fair play to you. Stand your ground. Don't make a play for something that isn't actually right for you. But if it is something you want, don't not try because you're afraid of the failure. The only reason for not trying is because you don't want it.
Yeah.
So, do we have a question to end with?
Of course, always. So yes, I wanted to end on a positive note, talking about what can be a difficult subject, and it's about, is failing always failure? Sometimes, as we mentioned before, is it just a different path? So our question today is, can you think of a positive outcome from something that was perhaps originally, in that boom reaction moment, a failure? And I just thought that might be a really interesting question for people to reflect on, because we forget things like this, don't we? When things end up working out well, sometimes we forget those experiences. We can hold on to the ones that were really difficult and did have difficult repercussions, but we sometimes can forget, actually, this thing that didn't turn out well, perhaps in the end did, just differently. So my own experience, I mentioned it very briefly earlier, was about the university offer. So I had my heart set on going to a particular university, visited the campus, really wanted to go, and I didn't get offered a place. I was gutted. And I would have gone there. If they had offered me the place, I would have gone for sure. So I was a bit dejected, because I did actually get the grades that were needed, but all that aside, they didn't offer me a place. More for them.
They're lost.
I know, exactly. But you know what? I actually had a brilliant university experience. I went to Cardiff University, had a brilliant time there. And it's where I met my husband. And we are still together now, many, 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 many years later. And I just think, well, I know. And I just think our paths may never have crossed otherwise. And I know looking back, I could have had a different experience. Who knows? Could have met a different husband. Hope he's not.
We won't tell him, don't worry.
No, we won't tell him. But, I could have had a different path, but I just feel so lucky that turned out as it did. And, I met who I'm now with, and feel like that was just meant to be. Oh, that sounds really cheesy, doesn't it? But things would have meant a very different path for me, I think, had that original failure actually been, oh yes, do come here, and I would have gone for sure.
Whoa, that kind of sliding doors moment almost, isn't it?
It's a great film.
Yeah, especially that haircut. Anyway,
well, I think that was purely just to help us determine which version of her we
keep track of it.
very, very subtly done, but but it's true, isn't it? You just think it's in a moment things can shift, but they're not always for the negative, even if it's not what we thought we wanted at the time. So do tell us yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, following on from your lovely romantic story there, I failed at my first marriage. And I find it interesting in saying that I talk about I failed at my first marriage rather than my first marriage failed, but that's how it feels. And that did not feel good. And it was very painful. And there was a lot of self-recrimination and beating myself up. And, it wasn't a good time for our son. And it was hard. But from a distance of a decade or so, well over a decade now, it was so definitely the right decision. It was for the best. I'm in a much better place than I was, a much happier place and a much healthier relationship. And I'm pretty sure the same is true for my ex as well. And it's, did I want to have a failed marriage? No, nobody wants that. Do I regret the pain that all involved experienced as a result of that failure? Of course. But am I very glad to be where I am? Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said there about, you said you failed at it rather than it was. Do you still feel that now, all this time later?
Yes, not in the sense that it was all my fault. It takes two to make or break a relationship. So maybe a more accurate way of saying we failed at our marriage, but in some ways it feels quite empowering to say I failed, to take ownership of my part of that, and a recognition that I can acknowledge my own shortcomings in that relationship, as well as recognizing shortcomings on my ex's side and just in the dynamic between us. So going back to what you said right towards the start around, you quite like talking about failing and using the word and reflecting on it, whatever. Yeah, it feels quite good to use the word.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that you've actually said, I'm okay with acknowledging my part in it, but it wasn't solely yours. So I think that's a very healthy view.
My ex might disagree, of course, but
it's not his podcast though, so that's okay.
Yeah.
Talking of which, I am just going to mention for our listeners, in case there is a brilliant other podcast. You are allowed to listen to one other podcast, this one and one other.
Just the one.
Just the one. And it's actually called How to Fail with Elizabeth Day. It is absolutely brilliant. I've been listening to it for a long time now. There's it must be about 20 odd series by now. And I just love the fact she talks to people openly about their failures. So it's so not taboo. It's all about what has been your life experience to date. Often it has led to great success. And she's had some fascinating guests on, people I've not really, celebrities I've not really listened to before, not known much about, even some like reality stars. But they've all been quite insightful, interesting episodes. So little plug there for another podcast, but please do still come back to this one. And she can plug ours any day. It'd be brilliant. Well, I think that's it for this week.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
It would be lovely. It would be lovely. So yes, do take away that question, a positive outcome from something that might originally have been a failure. I just think it might be a helpful way to consider this failure topic in a less wincing kind of way. Hopefully we have managed to portray that it's not always bad news. And we will see you all soon for another episode.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.